Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be continuing our tour of the G3000 system by breaking down some of the systems menus and actually get flying. Let's get started. So last time we basically walked you through all the different paradigms of the G3000 system, kind of explain where things are, kind of how they work. Today what we're going to do is we're going to dive into kind of how you can tweak things a little bit, as well as how you can get to the system menus that you might need for your flight. So what we're going to do first is we're going to come swing over to our MFD here. We're going to go ahead and change what mode it's on. So what I'm going to check here is I'm going to check to make sure I'm on the selected pane, which you can see is clearly blue right here. If I went to split mode, by the way, and do two different systems pages, I could, but for now I'm going to be leaving it full. And one of the things you'll notice is I have this aircraft systems button located down here. Now when I press that button, it's going to bring up a screen that allows me to dial in a lot of different details onto my flight. Now if you hit this one, you're going to be disappointed. It's just going to tell you landing elevation. But if you press this one, you will notice the screen changes to a brand new mode that gives me all this critical information located right here. Now, the reason this is kind of interesting is you'll probably observe it splits my screen as soon as I did that. There are no full screen versions of these systems pages. However, if you wanted to, you could come up here, switch to the other pane, go to systems mode, and put up a different systems page. Now, the reason that's so cool is it allows you to do something like this, where you have kind of your aircraft status, you can see our temperatures, you can see our flight, emergency exit, you can see our oxygen is doing, it's fine, we put plenty in earlier. You can even come over here and see like how much fuel we have. You've already used a gallon, I've used $7 worth of gas already, yikes. It also tells you all the different statuses built into these pages. Now with that in mind, I'm going to switch back to my left page. Now I'm going to swing over to my electrical power page. Now the reason this is so cool is, again, you can have both of these visible at the same time, basically giving you the ability to have almost like an engineer sitting over on this side, kind of keeping an eye on everything, making sure it's all moving smoothly. Obviously, we're not moving very much at all, but that gives you an idea. Come to your environmental page, which is excellent. It's going to kind of let you know that everything's working. Keep in mind, a lot of this is simplified because this is the flight sim version, the Microsoft version, I should say, kind of a thing. And of course, if we go down to ice protection, that could be fun too. Ice protection, you can see exactly what's on, what's off. You can see our probes are all set. And of course, landing gear if you're looking for your brakes and making sure all that works, functionality and all that good stuff. Now, the reason this can be very, very useful to us, of course, is if I go back to my engine page, is I can leave engine on one side and leave my map on the other. So if I want to, for example, go back, if I want to click on map real quick, I can pop that up and basically have that going for me while we're keeping an eye on it. Another really common strategy that people will do is they'll put it on this screen. So what I can do is I can come here, split the screen just like that, swing this over to my pane, which is going to be my left one, go to my aircraft systems, go to my engine and fuel, and then of course what I can do is I can come back over here, switch it to the middle pane, swing that over to my map, go ahead and pop the full display like that. So that way you have everything kind of just sort of in front of you if that's something that you desire. Again, I find this kind of an awkward sort of arrangement, so it kind of makes that a little bit tricky as far as getting things where they need to be. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to full screen here and kind of leave it as sort of the standard view, especially seeing as all of our settings are kind of all squared away right now. So I don't really have to fiddle with it too much. It's pretty much the way that I like it. Now, let's say we want to actually do this flight today. We've had a good introduction to everything, where the different buttons are. You should probably be pretty comfortable with all that. But I want to actually get this thing going the way that I want to. So what we need to do now is we need to get all of our automatic pilot stuff set up. And unfortunately for us, when you look around for the first time, you're like, wait a minute, on a G1000, everything's just kind of right there. What do we get in the G? Oh, it's all down here now. Yeah, it's on its own little page. The good news is everything's exactly the same. It just so happens to be directly in front of you. So now let's say we want to select an altitude here. You can just go ahead and twist this sucker. Let's say we want to go up to, well, to about 13,000 feet. We're traveling east. Yeah, sounds about right to me. Of course, if we wanted to do a specific heading, we could. I can dial this and I can actually right-click on this and that'll synchronize your heading. You can actually look on the right side as I twist my heading where it goes. Remember, we're going to be taking off 204 degrees here, which is at runway 2. And you can actually have that pre-selected before you actually get rolling here. Now, when you look down here, you'll probably notice that something seems to be missing. You're going to be sitting here scrambling, trying to find where on earth is the course select. Let's say we wanted to do something where we wanted to fly a VOR. I don't have a course knob. Actually, you do have a course knob. And the way you get to it is you turn the VOR on. You're going to notice there's a new knob up here. This is the word course. So now in order to set your course, you'd have to actually kind of run up here and actually give that thing a quick little dial. So for example, if we wanted to do that 204 and actually use Barnes VOR to kind of get us there, that's exactly where that course knob is in the event that you have to get that set up. We're going to deal with that a little later on when we get closer to our approach here. So that's all been set up. We've got our heading sets. Our altitude has been selected. We can, of course, come in here and fiddle with our vertical speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and press FD for Flight Director. And you can see we have two selected modes. So we have roll mode, and of course we have pit with outs armed. Outs simply means that this selected altitude will be held once we get there. That's actually basically what we want it to do. So if we wanted to, of course, we could come down here, as just like with the G1000, I could actually pull this little knob, and I can dial in the exact climb attitude that I want to do. For example, let's say I want to do 7.5, which is pretty standard. I could basically stick it right there and just leave it there. If I want to bring it down a little bit, of course, I can go the other way. For me, though, like I said, 7.5, you can actually see the little angle there. 6.7, we'll just call it 7 degrees. Too much. A little less. There it is, 7 degrees. Delightful. So now when we take off, we can actually switch to heading hold mode. Check this out. And have a little bar here to tell us exactly what we need to do for our pitch. So now we're pretty much ready to go as far as the automatic pilot goes. We've got ourselves a selected course all ready to rock. We've got everything set up down on the pieces. We've got our altitude pre-selected. Just a matter of getting in the air. This thing sounds kind of like an angry vacuum cleaner, not going to lie. So as we go ripping down the runway, you'll notice that our flight director is actually still in the same spot we left it back when we were getting all set up on the ground. The reason this is so darn helpful is, as I mentioned, if you're doing something like a 0-0 takeoff or something incredibly sketchy like that, it makes it so easy to just go, what? Just like that. And now look at that. Watch this. Automatic pilot engage. No, we'll save the autopilot till we get a little bit higher. But it gives you an idea of just how easy it is to get that set up.
Wincom. Visibility 9er.
Now, the interesting thing is that Bradley ATIS, which we dialed in a while ago, as you recall, finally catches up to us.
299er 2.15.
VFR, aircraft, say, direction of flight.
Runway tree. VFR aircraft say direction of flight.
Nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shut that off before I go absolutely insane here. So we can just come here and switch the frequency. And then we'll go back to the PFD page. Delightful. Make sure that's all set. Autopilot is enabled. The aircraft is going to start settling itself down. Good time to go ahead and get our thrust all squared away here. And you can see it kind of ran away with us when I was fiddling with the buttons. Thou shalt not push too many buttons at one time. Causes problems. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and flip on navigational hold. And what you'll observe is the aircraft does not turn. Now, the reason it does not turn is because it has no course to lock onto yet. Now, you'll see we're way off course here. We're trying to get to Hartford, but we're not getting there. So what I can do is I can actually use my heading hold, and I can spin us around like this. Let's say I want to do 165, for example. And what that will do is that will put us on an intercept course with our actual navigation course. Now, what's interesting here is this little heading here is going to stay on this mode until we cross close enough to our actual line that we're going to be following to get us where we need to go. Just like that. You can see it is automatically locking on, and it's doing a really, really nice job of lining up with this little navigational course that we're basically trying to get ourselves towards and taking us in that direction directly. Now, the cool thing here is that we basically can relax, so there's not a lot we need to do. However, I'm not like that, so of course we're going to have to do awful things to make things nice and complicated for ourselves. So what I'm going to do now is, as we're climbing here, is I'm going to go to my flight plan page here. And one of the things you'll notice is that we can actually dial in specific angles and specific speeds we want to cross things, which I think is really cool. Now, if I click on here, I can cross Hartford, for example. Like if I wanted to do 150 knots, I could put in 150 knots, traveling to Nantucket. I can actually come in here and say I want to be below, 250 or something like that. I don't know why I would do that, because it's going to be awfully difficult to get to that, but that's just one of the neat things that we can do with this. The other option we have, of course, is vertical navigation. Now, the cool thing with vertical navigation with the G3000, which is a little different than the G1000, everything's kind of integrated, including climbing. So one of the cool things is we can come over here and press VNAV, just like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to do VPIT. And basically, it's going to lock onto a specific pitch. You can actually see right here on the left that it is trying to capture 165 knots. And now the reason it's doing that, of course, is because of the way it is right now. That is trying to achieve its speed target. And you can actually watch slowly as this thing creeps downwards, attempting to lock onto it. Again, the FADEX doing a lovely job here, basically reducing our engine power, but that's perfectly fine. Like I said, part of the fun, as they say. So that's all set. Again, I can have the VNAV go up. I can have it climb. I can even set a cruise. I'm cruising at 250 knots. Then I can even come in here and give it a descent schedule. I can actually come in here like this, and I can do pilot defined. I can come in here and pre-hit select that one. So everything's all set. Now, one of the things you have to know about that, though, is if you float down here, you'll notice that there's a man button, and you'll notice there's an AT button. You have to actually arm all of this in order for it to actually work. If you don't do that, none of that's going to work. You see how I did that little twitch there? That was about as much as it needed to do to set the correct system. Now, because we are below our 165, it's not going to go racing up to it until we get a little bit closer to it. And just like that, 13,000 feet, we level off. Now, the cool thing here is if you look across the top, you can see speed selected as 250. We're in FMS hold, which just means autopilot. We have autopilot, yaw damper, and auto throttle. And of course, our V speed is selected, altitude 13,000 feet. Oh no, weather happened. Oh no! I'm not that worried about it. So a good time, of course, to go ahead and take a look at the weather radar. So now that this is all preset and everything's kind of accelerating, well, we got to descend now because, of course, all the weather is all different, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my PFD real quick. I'm going to make sure the radar page is selected. So I'm going to, whoa, I don't want to split that one. That would be mean. MFD, there we go, split. Got it. Head back here, go back to home, so everything's all ready to go. And of course, I've got the weather page. Now, the weather's a really, really cool page because there's actually different modes. And if I press this button right here, you can actually change the different modes that you have. Now, under connects, of course, there's all sorts of fun things here. You can define the coverage range if you want to be absolutely insane. You can change the orientation. You can turn on the different radar modes, stuff like that. But we can't. The only thing we can turn on is the radar. But the important thing here is if you go to Wix radar, you can actually change the modes on this. So if I were to go to Wix radar settings, I can actually click this button to turn it on. And what you'll notice here is there's a couple different options. You'll see that we have display mode for weather, which is pretty much the standard. You can see we have some rain to the west of us. You also, like east of us rather, you also have the ability, of course, to, we can't do this, unfortunately. It would be so cool. You can crank this up really, really, really high. Yeah, there you go. See, I can start to see the ground reflections. Nice. Leave it on auto. It's fine. And of course, the other thing you can do is you can switch to a vertical scan. Now, the reason this is so cool is you can actually see exactly what the altitudes are as well as how far away the nastiness is. So right now, there's not a lot of nastiness. If I want to adjust the range, I could actually come over here and adjust this. So you can see here, this is out to 60,000 feet, and there's a little smidge of green, what is it, about 40 miles away from us. So that is a pretty darn far away threat as far as weather goes here. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. And one of the things I really like too is in the real world, you could tilt the radar up and down and set different sectors and stuff like that. You even got a little bearing line here if you want to see where you're going relative to everything on here. But it's a really, really handy feature in the G3000 and the aircraft that support that particular feature. You're not always going to get that particular feature, but when you do, like I said, it's actually kind of a nice thing to have. All right, it's looking pretty good. It's time to start thinking about descent. So for particular descent here, pretty straightforward because we have a very long way to go. Because we've set everything up at the VNAV, it's simply a matter of defining what our minimum altitude is going to be and then basically let the computer take it from here. So if I were to come over here, for example, and drop this down to, let's say, 2,500 feet, you'll notice we don't begin to descend right away. You notice instead, this little thing, this is the word path appears. And that path there is simply referring to it's expecting to have to descend. So when we play with this, of course, so you want to go ahead and take a few moments to run through and make sure everything is the way you want it to be before you start getting too carried away with some of the different items. This is also a really, really good time, of course, to run over to your minimums if you know that you need to set them to, say, radar minimums, for example, to go ahead and dial those in at this time and basically get ready for your particular approach that you're going to need to land today. So I'm going to go ahead over to the approach page real quick, press proc. We've already got one selected. I'm going to go ahead and press Activate Approach. And the nice thing is not a lot's going to change. Now, the reason not a lot's going to change is because we have to approach the airport basically for the purposes of getting there before we can do anything else. As a matter of fact, I can zoom out a little bit. You can see we're basically going to hit Nantucket and do a big donut. We'll go ahead and get you when we get a little closer. Now, what you'll see here is all of a sudden, this little tiny diamond appeared and this thing turned pink or magenta over here on the right. We're now on vertical path hold mode. What it does is it actually has the vocal call out to give you a heads up to let you know that that mode has been selected. You can see the weather out here by Nantucket is not nearly as good as it was over there in Massachusetts. Part of the fun, I guess they say. Now, the really slick trick here is because we're on automatic everything right now, as soon as we cross that little threshold right now, you can actually see it selected, we'll start to tip over and make our way down for a landing. You can see the 2,000 feet is what it expects us to hit, which would be the same for that particular instrument approach. But of course, I'm limiting it to 2,500 feet because, you know, we're going down. And there we are. We're basically crossing over Nantucket now. And of course, the weather's a little bit better here than it was. Like I said, we had to punch through a bunch of clouds to get here, and I'm very grateful for all the anti-icing systems on here to make our lives a little bit simpler. All right, we got ourselves lined up. Everything's all set. We've done our big old turn. Time to go ahead and set our approach hold on. So now that we've enabled approach hold, remember this is a GPS approach. Everything's all set. One thing you want to keep an eye out for is when you are doing your approach to land here, just be very, very mindful of whatever speed it is you're approaching at. Because right now the FMS, for example, is locked to 210 knots because I came down here and ordered up 210 knots. Now, if I clicked on the resume button, it would actually spike back up to its particular speed that it needs to be. Now, if we go down to our handy-dandy little approach speeds here, we've got our general and our takeoff speeds here, our rotate. You can see our climb speed of 165. We can actually enable this. Now, if we wanted to dial in our approach speed for landing, let's say we wanted to do something like 110 or something like that, we could actually dial that in directly into here. So I could say 110, for example, and press OK. And what that will do is that actually starts slowing us down to that speed. In this case, I'd actually rather do 120. 120, I'll press enter. You can see our engine starts to spool down, getting us ready for that final approach. The last couple things we need to think about as we start to slide in for our landing here is just considering preparing for actually being on the ground again. One thing that we would normally do in the real world, and this would be something you kind of do right after you hit the ground, of course, is making sure that your weather radar, for example, is off. So I'm going to come down here, go flip over to that page. I'm just going to shut it off real quickly, sap it over to the standby option, take us back home, which is pretty good to go. Now I'm going to come over here to the middle page here, swing this up to full, and I'm going to zoom in nice and strong. One of the things we would normally be doing, of course, is we'd be getting ready for the missed approach in the event that we couldn't find the runway. Fortunately for us, it's right there, so I'm not too worried about it. Probably not the best day to fly. Rarely is. Easy. This is actually not the windiest I've had here. This is only a 23 knot wind. That would be a go around right there, but we'll make it work. Woof! Back in the air again. Woohoo! That was fun. So as you can see, the G3000 system is much better than my landing. But at the same token, as you can see exactly how it does so much work here for you. It makes your life so much simpler and kind of takes a lot of the bite out of a lot of these types of flights. So when you're planning them, as well as kind of going through all the different pieces and actually going through and executing them. Now, one of the things you can do too, after we go ahead and pull ourselves off the runway here, I just want to get clear so I'm not making a mess and having everybody all back up behind me or anything like that. Of course, if we're in career mode, we cross that line and get yelled at, which makes no sense, but that's okay. There we go. Go ahead and hold tight right there. And one of the last things we'll take a look at is the fact you can actually zoom in so far, you can actually see the individual taxiways. Now, normally you'd actually have these labeled on the G1000 and the G3000, but for us, it's just like that. Enjoy.